sinners, and saints. Dust off those horns and halos. It's time for Alan After Dark.
Oh, Lord have mercy. Sinners, saints, bitches, whores, sluts, skanks, trash, scumbags, ass lickers, dick suckers, pole smokers, ass munchers, finger bingers. I say the same damn thing every week, don't I? Shit. I didn't say mango eaters, did I? Well, before that. Jesus. What a fucking week we've had, haven't we? Sinners, saints. We have. At least I have. Wow. Just an adventure left and right for me. At happy hour last night, a very interesting conversation kind of developed, and we blew the mind of Alex, our bartender. He is the sweetest guy. He's funny. He's cute as fuck. But, he's young. He's, in his 20s. He's got his whole life ahead of him. Hopefully, the orange turd won't destroy everything, but, we always have hope. A lot of us are older guys. We're not Gen Z necessarily, or millennials. We're a little bit older. I don't know how it came up, but we were just talking about some of the things that we did back in the day that we don't do now. I'm going to give you an example, and Alex was involved in this conversation. When we told him that there was a time when there were no ATM machines, that credit cards were very rare, and if you were heading out to the club and you needed cash, when you're depositing your paycheck, you would get a little cash back. But also, sometimes you would write a check to yourself, or you could write a check out to cash. The payee would be cash, C-A-S-H, and you could do it that way. But there was always that fear that if you were to lose it before you got it cash, that somebody else could take that and basically cash it for themselves. But in most cases, if someone tried to do that and the person, the cashier, the bank teller would ask for an ID and they would be hesitant to cash a check for someone that didn't match the name on the check. But you never know. Still, it was worth worrying about. So it was always better to make the payee your own name to get that cash. You didn't have an ATM machine. You had to go through a drive-through at your bank or go inside, present them with a check to yourself, and they would give you your cash. And that's how we did it. Luckily for me, that was a brief period of time for me. And then we did have credit cards and ATM machines. Oh, and here is just a little caveat. We didn't have direct deposit back in the day. That's right. You received a check and you had to handle it yourself with your bank, or cash it at a store and keep all the cash. A fact. Use it as you wish. It makes you think about how far we've come and wondering about you young folks that are listening. How would you have managed? Let's say that you were all of a sudden sent back in time and it was the early 80s, maybe up to the early 90s, okay? You wouldn't have your hookup apps. There would be no Growler, no Grindr, no Scruff, none of that. You weren't really allowed to be too open in most places. If you lived in New York, San Francisco, LA, the bigger cities, it was more tolerated then. But if you were from areas like I was from, here in the Bible Belt, where you had to travel to a bigger city, all you had was the clubs. Now, I've preached on this a bunch of times. There really wasn't ways to connect with people, except for sometimes it could be just by coincidence. You might figure each other out. And I told you all before that I've run into people at a club, even in Atlanta, and it was somebody that I actually went to high school with, that I had a clue about a couple of them, but there were several that I didn't have a clue that they were gay. But that was the only way you could figure it out. Now you do have the hookup apps, and you have all these great ways of connecting with people, and you can be more open, and sexuality is definitely more open and it's more fluid, and you don't have to worry so much about who's gay, who's straight, or in between. What happens just happens. And by the way, a lot of the clubs back in the good old days didn't accept anything but cash. So you always had to have cash in your pocket. If you went to the club and you were going to be drinking, you had to have cash on you. I wonder if bartenders and servers got ripped off a little bit because people would tend to not tip as much with cash, I think, as they would with a credit card. But I'm just saying. Phone booths. Like if you were to break down in your car somewhere, well, you didn't have a phone. If you broke down in an area where people might know you, you were lucky because they could pick you up and take you home or whatever. But the odds are you never were in a good place when your car breaks down. So you'd had to find a phone booth. Now we all have cell phones. It's so incredible to think back when you started seeing advertisements on TV about cell phones. One of the ways they pitched them was a young girl in a car trapped on the side of the road calling her mom and dad saying, "The car's broke down. I'm on the side of the interstate. Can you please come and get me?" That, well, using fear and the fact that a cell phone could help you in a time of crisis or need really did appeal to a lot of us. And that's the first thing I thought of was like, wow, that's going to be a lifesaver for so many people at certain times. And here, let me give you a couple of examples. If you remember, I used to work in a manufacturing position, but I was in their shipping and receiving department. And it took about 35 to 40 minutes to get there from home. And I was still living at home. And it's a really rural drive. You drove through vast areas of farmland, and it was the country. You know, it wasn't the city. And one morning on the way to work, I had figured out a different route to go to my job that I had not really shared with my parents. And one morning, I was on this road. It's still dark, and the car just stopped working. I had to pull off to the side of the road. And I'm like, oh my God, I am in the middle of nowhere. What in the hell am I going to do? There was no phone booth. There was nothing. And I was like, well, I have to go find help. Hope that maybe somebody I know might drive by, which I really doubted because it wasn't in my hometown. It was in an area between where I worked and home. So here I go, trekking up this road, looking for a house and maybe somebody who could help me. And I remember virtually no cars driving by. And even that made me nervous because you never knew if somebody, if they didn't see you, they could run over you. You hoped that you were being visible enough so they wouldn't hit you with the car or truck or whatever. I finally find this house sort of out in the field with this dirt road, and I see a light on. So I make my way hoping there's not a dog, that could attack me. And knocked on the door, and there was a little old lady. She looked terrified at me, and I just had to explain, "Ma'am, I'm so sorry to bother you, but my car is broken down, and would you mind calling this number and letting them know where I am?" And she goes, "Okay," and I told her the number, and she had to write it down, of course. She didn't offer to let me in, and I don't blame her for that. I was a perfect stranger, and you didn't let strangers in your house. You never knew if I could have been lying. I could have been a criminal, a robber, anything, a murderer, a rapist. And thankfully, my dad did answer, and he did know this road that I was on. And thankfully, 30-something minutes later, he found me, and oh my God, it was awful. Having to go find a mechanic, somebody who could tow the car and everything. And then one time, actually, it wasn't too long after that incident, I got the car fixed, or at least I thought I did. And it was a Saturday evening, and I told my little fib that I was going out with friends, and I was hanging out with them. We were going to the movies and out to eat. I decided to stop at the Kmart to pick me up some gum. I was going to the big city to the club that night, but I needed some chewing gum to keep my breath fresh, Just one of those things about being young and worried about bad breath. So anyway, go into the Kmart, get me some gum, come back out, and oh my God, the car won't start. I was really in trouble. I wasn't where I had hinted that I was, and I had lied to my parents. There were no friends I was going to meet. Obviously, I was going to the club. So I have to call, and my mom answers, and I had to tell her that I am broken down. I happen to be at the Kmart in this other town, and she just said, "Your father's on his way." He comes and gets me and doesn't have a lot to say, just says that we'll have to stop by the mechanic and have them tow the car back to their shop and work on it. But I get home, and one of the first things my mom says is, "Don't you need to call your friends?" And I was like, "Well, no, Mom, I called them from the phone booth." And she said, "You had that much change? Oh, and if you didn't realize, you had to put money in to make a call at a phone booth." I think at first it was like a nickel or a dime, but my experience was it was 25 and 50 cents. So anyway, I said, well, I talked to him, and then she says, "But you were there. I thought they were in the other town." And I just said, "Oh yeah, Mom, they are, but that's the way I go to get to their house." She didn't push it much further after that, but yeah, it kind of shows you how hard it could be without having a cell phone, and a little extra on top there of the troubles you had when you were in the closet. Imagine that you didn't have your cell phone. You would be almost lost. And I don't know about all of you, but now my cell phone is almost more valuable than anything in my wallet because everything is on it. There was one time when I thought I had lost my cell phone, that I had left it at the club one night. And I went into panic mode. My Madonna tickets were on there. I'm like, Jesus. Yeah. And it serves me right because I was being careless. I went to all the places, called everybody, actually communicated with people through social media on my laptop, trying to figure out where I left my phone, only to discover that I had knocked it off the night before, where it was sitting on the arm of my sofa and it had fallen underneath my couch. Yeah, but the relief I felt when I found it, oh, it was incredible. Back in the day, you didn't have a cell phone. You didn't have a way to text and message people. And you actually had to memorize phone numbers. And I'm pretty sure none of you remember or ever had to use a rotary phone, did you? I would love to see some of you try to dial a number the good old fashioned way. I wonder if some of us old timers could I even remember. I do remember, it would come right back to you, but I have to wonder if some people have forgotten how to use one. You also could get long distance charges. And I was talking to a person that I had met, well, through a pen pal service, and we decided to talk. Well, he lived in a different state, and back then you had long distance charges. And I'm guessing that there are still some now, but most of us have an unlimited plan that includes the whole country. But back then, the phone companies would charge you so much per minute, and it could become outrageous if you weren't careful. The cost, I mean. And just imagine, you used to have to call in to place an order at a restaurant. There were no apps, there were no online services that you could just click on a button and order it and go pick it up and pay for it. Didn't have any of that. Well, that's not really fair because some restaurants, even today, you still have to call in. So, A lot of things have definitely enhanced our way of life, for sure. But you know what? With all the technology, with all these great hookup apps and things, the art of the hookup hasn't really changed that much. The actual primal behaviors that we all have, that really hasn't changed. They're still like, even in a bar, I know that people have been on the hookup apps and realized that there was somebody within just a few feet within the bar on the same hookup app. So that would be one way, I guess, to not even have to worry about buying somebody a drink. But can I ask you all, those of you who do use the apps, is it just wham, bam, thank you, sir? Do you just like talk back and forth a little bit, then go over, meet somewhere, and suck and fuck and finger and binger? I'm just curious. I guess I should know that, right? But, I've not had good luck at all with the hookup apps. So that's why I'm curious as to how it's supposed to work. But in the good old days, in the men's room at the club, a look between two guys could make the difference between a suck or a fuck or whatever. I mean, I told you, I've had some amazing, sexy, erotic, dirty hookups and never know the guy's name. I like that. I like that kind of stuff. I do. And I don't care if I'm 100 years old. I think I'll still be intrigued by that. A men's room or the boys' room when we were in school was always a scary thing for us gay guys. But when I got into the clubs and stuff, I flipped that. And the thought of a blow in the stall of a men's room gives me a boner to this day. And I'll be heading to happy hour shortly. Maybe we'll reenact that kind of memory once again. And with technology, AI, artificial intelligence, now with the way that videos can be created, there's nothing left to the imagination. But just to put this in perspective, masturbation fantasies, anybody can. You can envision sex with any guy or girl that you want, right? We all can picture it in our mind if we're beaten off or, masturbating, to be polite, I guess. We can picture that person and us having sex with them. And with AI, I know that you'll be able to create your own videos of people. Like I could create one of Henry Cavill and me, him slam fucking me up against a wall, Texas style. So there'll be nothing left to the imagination. But I guess in the privacy of your own home, those kinds of videos would be very stimulating, wouldn't they? But you can, right? I mean, you're not always getting laid, even if you're married. Do you not have fantasies and do you not picture your celebrity crush or a work crush or whatever? Do you not picture them sexually? I do. Unfortunately, I do think that porn can strip that out of you, where when I was younger, my creative mind could really envision a scenario, a sexual scenario. And porn's taken a little bit of that away from me. Maybe I'll be one of those who does indulge in AI porn. I mean, we already see, virtually everything on social media now. Like those pictures of Henry Cavill and Chris Evans in the shower making out and things. I mean, it's not the best AI, but it does invoke an erection sometimes. And I'm not the biggest fan of Chris Evans, but Henry Cavill is he is just my lust in the dust, if I can say it that way. Oh, I didn't tell you all. My quote unquote work crush, we'll call him Nick. We were in a meeting the other day, and as I'm going into the conference room, he comes in right behind me. He says, I'm going to sit by you, and if I say something wrong in this presentation, you just punch me in the arm. Oh, I wanted to say, can I just grab you by the dick? It was nice sitting beside him for so long. He just has that chemistry, that thing that I can't put my finger on exactly, other than he's smart, his voice is sexy, and his body is sexy. I know, he is absolutely heterosexual, and I suspect he may be married. I know he's been living with his girlfriend for a while, but I think they might have gotten married and just not told anybody. But, through AI and my fantasies, I can have sex with him, can I? Boy, that's a big difference from the good old days, I'm telling you. But anyway, getting back on track with our discussion this week, let's not forget, there was no such thing as Google, and you usually had to look things up in a phone book. Yes, there is a phone directory, a book that had all listed phone numbers, and you had the yellow pages that would provide business information and locations, numbers you call to get directions or something like that. Hell, there was a number you could call just to make sure you had the correct time. And dialing an operator, does any of the phone companies actually have the same type of operator, a human, that they did back in the good old days? I think not. But anyway, I think I've spouted off long enough tonight. Just give me some dick. Well, that was a way to end an episode, wasn't it? Wow. I could think of worse ways to end an episode. So I hope you've had a good time. I appreciate you keeping me company for just a little while. Hopefully I've kept you company. And always remember, take life by the balls and be real. We'll see you soon.